I'll say this right off the bat. I love Spider-Man. I always have ever since I was a kid. I read some of the comics, I watched the animated series, I watched the 90s one and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and I have seen every single Spider-Man movie. The first time I encountered the web slinger himself is based off of the Sam Raimi trilogy. Now, while I do agree that Spider-Man 3 is a mixed bag, it's the first and second one that I hold so close to my heart, with the first one being my personal favorite. Now, while I do agree that Spider-Man 2 is a little bit better than the first Spider-Man movie, I still kind of hold the first one as a childhood personal favorite of mine. Why? Because it was a movie that every time it was on TV, I would watch it. And it didn't really matter where I was at, whether it was a kid's birthday party at someone's house, or a bowling alley, or even the laundromat. Every time it was on screen, I would part my rear end down on a chair and I would watch it, all the way to the ending credits. It was something that became a part of my childhood. I remembered such great moments like the fist fight in the abandoned hospital, the upside down kiss, amazing characters like Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, Kirsten Dunst as the girl next door, Mary Jane Watson, and Willem Dafoe as the scary and menacing Green Goblin. It was something that I have always loved ever since I was a kid, and I still love it to this day. However, when things got a little bit too complicated with Sony and Sam Raimi ended up leaving the project entirely, Sony decided to hire Mark Webb for the Amazing Spider-Man, the second interpretation of the Spider-Man character, and the second interpretation of the storyline of Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man is one of the most polarizing and difficult movies I have ever reviewed in my life. Difficult in the sense that there are so many things that are good in this movie, but you just can't ignore the multitudinous amounts of faults in it. And then came out The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was such a laborious dumpster fire that Sony gave the Spider-Man rights back to Marvel. And it is still a Spider-Man movie to this day I do not physically own. And now we are here with the third reiteration of the Spider-Man character with SpiderMan Homecoming. Now, this is a movie that really happens months after Captain America's Civil War. We follow Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, back into high school. Spider-Man, of course, being played by Tom Holland. And he's balancing and being responsible for a lot of things like taking care of Aunt May, doing his schoolwork, being Spider-Man and preventing criminal activity, and he's also wanting to apply for an internship for the Stark Industries. However, through all of Peter Parker's determination, Tony Stark, played once again by Robert Downey Jr., says he really isn't ready for it just yet. However, an evil villain known as the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, is basically the head of weapons-grade bank robbers and arms dealers. And so Spider-Man sees this, and it's up to him to not only stop the Vulture, but to prove to Tony Stark once and for all that he has what it takes to become an Avenger. Now, seeing that this is the third reinterpretation of Spider-Man has me worried a little bit, because really it could go either way. It could either be good, or it can be really And as far as Spider-Man movies goes, after 13 long years of trying to find a good Spider-Man movie, we finally got it. This is a fun, light-hearted superhero movie filled with everything you love about Spider-Man. Now, since it's the third reinterpretation of Spider-Man, let's talk about Tom Holland as Spider-Man. We have seen Spider-Man being played by actors over the years, being played by actors like my personal favorite, Tobey Maguire, and even others like Andrew Garfield. And I do think in this third interpretation, Tom Holland does a really excellent job as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He's very likable at points, he's a bit nerdy, he's a bit innocent, and all the quirkiness and charisma that you've seen from Spider-Man over the years, it's here, and Tom Holland plays him like a champ. From heroes, we go to villains, and I do agree that Michael Keaton really does a good job as the Vulture. First of all, his motivation makes sense, and you understand why he wants to do this. And second, when I was watching this movie, I was like, okay, you're a decent villain, I understand your motivation, but you're not making me feel like you're one of the best ever. It isn't till the third act where I was like, now it's getting interesting. Now we're talking. Keaton is really good in this movie, and I think he's the third best Spider-Man villain we've had, behind awesome villains like the Green Goblin and Otto Octavius, aka Dr. Octopus. The rest of the cast is good, like Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, being a really good surrogate father figure to Peter Parker. He does a good job, and this time it's not a phoned-in cameo. What I really liked about this movie is that it captures the aesthetic of the high school setting. Pretty much something like you would see out of a John Hughes movie. Pretty much something like you would see out of a John Hughes movie. In fact, the director has been quoted in saying he's been pretty much inspired by movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and The Breakfast Club, and it's truly great how much he displays the setting of high school in here. There are all things like cliques in the cafeteria, who's going to the big dance, and stuff like detention and gym class, and to be a little honest, it gets pretty nostalgic. Yes, this is a Marvel movie, so of course you're gonna get your comedy. And yes, the movie is a bit funny and it has its laughs. And the action, while nothing groundbreaking and visually stunning, are still kinda entertaining. Now I admit, I really do like this movie, however, it's not a perfect movie. This movie feels like it was made by two separate studios who are trying to make the safest decisions possible, so that way they don't take any risks to upset the audience. And that's basically one of my biggest problems with this movie. It really doesn't take any emotional risks. There's not really a moment where you really care what's going on. But like I said before, Tom Holland does a really good performance, and he's great as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. But as I was watching this movie, I was like, where is the part where you feel sorry for him? Where's the part where you want to root for him to beat the bad guy? And the problem is, there aren't any scenes like that. This movie really plays itself safe. It doesn't really take any risks. The only time when you feel sorry for Peter Parker was when he gets his suit taken away. And mostly it's because of that determination to please Tony Stark. What about the stuff that happens throughout school? Things like his romance with Liz Allen. Sure, it works narrative-wise, but emotionally, it's kinda shallow. And what about his situations with Flash Thompson? Here's the thing I have with Flash Thompson. He's basically the attention-seeking bully you would see in almost every single high school. Here's the thing in the originals, when he was getting bullied by Flash Thompson, you actually felt sorry for him. Not just because he was Mary Jane's boyfriend, but you really rooted for him to teach Flash a lesson. You never really get the feeling that Spider-Man was a loser in high school, because he's really not. He's actually kind of like an everyday kid in high school. And the film's supposed best scene in the movie is basically lifted out of the comics. And the reason why that bit in the comic worked is because of all the emotion about all the struggle that Peter Parker was dealing with Uncle Ben and other peoples he loved, like Mary Jane and Aunt May. Here, it's not really there emotion-wise because at the end of the day, Peter Parker is just a kid who wants a job. Now, it may feel like I'm a little harping on this movie, but I'm really not. This is a very entertaining Spider-Man movie. It's just that it really lacked one problem, and that was emotion and heart. However, Tom Holland, Michael Keaton, Robert Downey Jr. really do great in the roles. It captures the aesthetic of high school very well. The action, while kind of bland, is entertaining enough. The comedy is spot on. And overall, it's a very fun experience at the movies. And with that being said, Spider-Man Homecoming earns a 4 out of 5. Yes, folks, you just heard it now. Spider-Man is back. Alright guys, that is my review of Spider-Man Homecoming. What is your ideal version of Spider-Man? Not based on what the movies showed you, but what is your ideal version of Spider-Man? It could be dark, it could be lighthearted, it could be funny, it could be serious. Whatever it is, comment below. Let me know. Also, let me know what you thought about this movie. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And also, be sure to subscribe for more. My name is Luke Nukem, and folks, Spider-Man is back.